Hey everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back. This is the only channel across the world that is 100% dedicated to adult survivors of child sexual abuse. I'm Gloria Masters, I'm your host, and it's a real privilege and honour to be here with you again, second year running. So we have a wonderful guest to introduce you to today. This is the second in our supporter series, and by that I mean the wonderful men and women who support our survivors, whether it's husbands, wives, parents, siblings, friends, partners. These are our supporters. So we're bringing some stories to you and some people to you because the learning they offer and the insights they have can help all of us. Before I introduce Penny to you, I just need to give a trigger warning. If for any reason watching this you feel at all triggered, please stop watching. Go to the show notes below and you'll be directed there for some help and some resource. So let's meet Penny. So Penny is married to Todd. Todd has been on the show and on panel discussions several times over the last year. Penny is an early childhood teacher. She's a wife, as I mentioned, and she's an avid supporter, the number one supporter of Todd. So we're going to have a great conversation. Welcome to you, Penny.
Hi, thank you.
Lovely of you to agree to come on the show. And I know that what you share today will certainly give us some food for thought. So thank you.
No problem.
I guess the main thing for me or for our audience watching is, how did this all begin for you in terms of once you had met Todd? And when did you first learn about the abuse he suffered?
I first learned he disclosed many years ago. I knew him in my early 20s, and he did tell me that he'd been abused with no detail. Just that was pretty much where we'd left it. And when we caught up many years later, about 15, 16 years later, he did disclose to me, and it didn't come all at once. He told me more of an overview, maybe you could say, because his experience was spanned many years. So there's a lot to cover, obviously. And I guess I was shocked. I mean, I knew, like I said, I knew he'd been abused, but to the degree, I felt shocked. And there's the part of you inside that just breaks just a little, because you're like, oh, this shouldn't happen to any person at all. And it was hard. It was hard listening to. And then there was when he felt comfortable to elaborate further over months. Then heard a little bit more details and things like that. And I guess the shock wasn't quite the same, because I was aware that it had been quite traumatic. And I think it was that very initial one that probably took my breath away a bit. Yeah.
So to see someone you love and hear that, yes.
It's overwhelming. And I cried. I think that's quite a natural response, and I think that's completely okay to cry, because you're feeling that you can't experience their pain, but you're feeling the pain from them. Yes,
of course.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful. That just means that you have empathy which is what our beautiful survivor family watching and the supporters watching, what we need from our supporters is that
Yes.
so thank you for crying. Cry away.
Yeah.
It's really it's beautiful. And I suppose, once you learned, the full extent, I imagine you were married at that point or close to being married at that point?
Close to being married at that point. We communicate a lot, and shared. Oh gosh, we shared so much. I think. Yeah, I guess there was still probably possibly a few things I learned about him later on, but yeah, I think the bulk of it I knew by the time we got married. Yeah, I think we even had discussed some fear that about getting married to someone with so much baggage and things like that. And I'm like, I come with baggage too. It's fine. You don't get to this age and don't have baggage. And I know what he's been through is quite different baggage from what I've been through, but it still carries the same, we just communicate and we move through it.
So
Yeah.
would you say, and I think that's a core thing, that communicate and move through it, that's really valuable. Would you say in the times when Todd is being triggered, or you do notice it's looming for him,
Yes.
what do you notice in the behavior then, and how does that affect you?
Okay. Yeah. So quite often he'll go quiet, or he'll take himself away. Not saying walk out of the house, but he'll take himself off to the bedroom or something, and he will, just withdraw. And I know that he's just processing. He's processing whether it was something we've watched on TV or something that something that's been brought up in conversation, or just something small that could, and it's just really triggered him really fast. And he will say now, even, "Oh, I just need to have some space," and that's fine. I'm fine with that. I know what's going on for him, and just give him a few moments, and I'll check on him about 20 minutes later, and see if he wants to talk about it. If he doesn't, that's fine. If he does, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you notice in your earlier years together, as in, since you were in a relationship together,
Yes.
did you notice the behavior was different in terms of, now as you know each other so well and you're fully aware of everything, you can see how he can signal to you when, it's just a bit of a hard time?
Yeah. It was definitely learning. There was, like just simple things like, obviously he's a dairy farmer and he sleeps during the day. So sometimes when I'm around, I'll wake him up from that sleep. And I have to be very careful with the way I wake him up. I can't just go and say, "Todd, get out of bed." I actually have to be very gentle, because that's something that triggers him. And otherwise he gets quite frightened, and he can even if I do it gently, he can still be quite frightened when I'm rousing him from that sleep. Um, he gets this look in his eye, and it's like, well, but and I don't think I'll ever get used to that look. But that's okay. I know that he just needs to gather himself and be back aware of his surroundings, and know that he's safe. Yeah.
Yeah. And that must be really hard for you to see, and just,
Yeah.
from him, because the body never forgets. And
No.
a positive, I guess, around this is that it's a vindication, isn't it? That, yep, what he said happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, why would he be waking with that look?
Yeah. Oh, and there's not one moment that I haven't believed him,
Oh, no.
and it's
No, I don't.
yeah,
I know
it's interesting.
yeah, I'm just saying for survivors, what happens is we are so often disbelieved and
Yes,
made to feel that we are lying or wrong, as I know Todd experienced, that
yes,
this is a vindication for him, and
yes,
for other survivors watching, your body never forgets, and these triggers are sometimes we can be grateful to them because they show us our truth, because
yes.
we can't make it up, we can't
No.
really respond. But I guess that's one way, and that would be hard. Have you learned, I guess, how to manage that? Like once he's fully awake, are you then able to just, you know, do anything more to try and calm down that central nervous system, or do you just find, yep, he's okay now, I can?
Yep. I'll just give him a kiss on the cheek and tell him I'm going to make him a coffee and just give him a few moments to gather himself, and he comes out fine. He's yeah. I just kind of let him gather himself, and he's yeah.
What would you like, I guess, fellow supporters, so people like your lovely self, Penny, who you're married to a wonderful survivor who's been through so much.
Yeah.
Uh, what would you like supporters of survivors to know? What do you think is helpful for our wonderful supporters out there to kind of
Um.
understand about this whole
l-
trauma?
Listen, listen. You don't need to. You don't have to feel pressured to understand. You don't have to feel any pressure to come back with a response. Um. Don't feel like you need to um fix it, because you can't fix it. You cannot fix it for them, but you can listen, and that is part of the healing process. um, Listening and not saying I know how you feel, because I'm not sure if you do. Chances are you do not know how they are feeling. Chances are you can empathize, you can absolutely empathize, but you do not know unless you've been through the exact same scenario, which is chances are very slim.
Yeah.
I think um, ask if they want to be touched. Like if you want to give them a cuddle, you ask them, because when they're when they're expressing themselves, they might just want the freedom to just be zoned and get it off their chest, or they may want that touch to feel close, and not feel alone in it. Yeah. I think listening is the absolute key. Let them talk when they're ready. Don't expect it to all come out at once. Let them talk, and if you want to ask questions, don't expect the answer. They may not know how to express it either. So and just be okay with that. And I guess I've had different experiences in my own life, and I think I pull on those, I guess, my own personal toolbox on how to deal with to deal with my own feelings and thoughts. So yeah, I pull on those things, I guess, to get me through some of those conversations. But yeah, listening, and I think if someone discloses to you yeah, don't be judgmental. I think that would be the absolute key. Don't ever say you don't believe them. Don't ever say that. Or question
Yeah.
whether they're telling the whole truth or twisting it, because that's just not okay. You're there to listen. They've trusted you and enough in you, sorry, to open up, and that's such a privilege, such a privilege.
And
Yeah,
100% love what you're saying, Penny, because you you've really touched on boundaries, which I love. And for survivors and supporters like you, alike, all of us, boundaries are huge for us as survivors, and touch is a big one. I love the fact that you ask, do you want a hug or do you want to be touched? Because I think that gives back to a survivor the autonomy and the power over the choice. You see,
yes,
as children, we never had that,
no,
never had that choice. So can you see the power in you doing that?
yes, yes,
Supporters watching, do you see that, Jem? Ask. Don't just assume because a hug makes you feel better that that is what the survivor in your life wants. So thank you so much for raising that. It's hard, Penny, I imagine, to watch, your beautiful survivor husband suffer. And it would be equally challenging to not try and fix it.
yeah. Honestly, it would be a fantastic world if we could fix, but we can't. It's it's the survivor's journey, unfortunately. And I know they've been through so much, but it is their own journey to process and reach out and get that help, and make those steps to rebuilding their life. And there's definitely support out there. Yeah.
So let's get back to you.com, the wonderful Penny. You're doing great, thank you.
Okay.
Penny, what was a particularly challenging time for you dealing with, your husband's trauma? It might have been a time when he was triggered. It might have been when someone said something they perhaps shouldn't have, or you just noticed something and it was quite challenging. Can you talk us through something like that? And the only reason I ask is because there could be other fabulous supporters out there who have experienced a similar or the same thing. So what would have been a particularly challenging?
When we were leading up to go to court,
Yes.
we were going to court for her to go up against his father. He was suffering flashbacks, so he wasn't getting a lot of sleep. So his stress levels were a lot higher. He was less tolerant of anyone around him. And look, it was completely understandable. And that was really hard. That was extremely hard because I couldn't, as much as we want to fix, I couldn't take that away. Yeah,
So how did
it was emotional.
yeah,
Pardon?
how did it show itself? Was it like a rejection of, not you personally, but it would have felt like that, like he just didn't want you around him, or what was it? Was it short-tempered, or?
Yeah, he was just yeah. I don't even know if short-tempered is the right word. He was just a lot more sensitive. Like you could joke around about something, he didn't quite find some things funny as such, because he was tired. He was tired, he was stressed, he was worried, he had anxiety about everything, and it was understandable. But it was just being a lot more sensitive to his needs, and we had lots of talks around that, and how he wanted me to support him during that time, and even around the kids, you know, I needed to step in and maybe parent just a little bit more, so just to take the stress off him. Yeah.
Interesting, because when you're the caregiver, as you would have been in this scenario, and as supporters often are, without realizing it or putting your hand up to be that, you become that. And
Yes.
what we don't realize is, it's true of any caregiver role, that your needs have to come second, and
Yes.
sometimes that can be quite challenging. Can you
Yeah.
talk about kind of how that might have been challenging for you at times, or what about me? I need
You
some.
can feel quite alone. I know Todd's very open about what's happening, but myself, I'm not someone that likes to disclose too much. I quite keep to myself, and I guess I didn't have that someone to go offload his story to. And it's not my job. It's not for me to offload his story to people. But yeah, you do. You can feel quite alone in it. And I think if I had have asked him, you know, is it okay if I talk to blah, blah, blah about it, he would have been not a problem. But yeah, probably it's a me issue.
The weight would have been there because you're trying to carry your own stuff, and as you said at the beginning, we all have it. We've all got stuff.
Yeah.
But then you're having to keep the secret, if you like, for your amazing husband. So you're kind of carrying quite a load, and I wonder what that would have felt like for you.
Yes. Yeah. I think, yeah. I mean, I was offered counselling through his counsellor, and I did. I went there with a pretty open mind. Yeah, I think when you're at home dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, you learn to adjust. You do learn to cope with those things, and I think it's until you talk to your partner and really work through what their needs are, what is setting them off, what you can do to make their life easier for the meantime. Once you've learned that, then things run a bit smoother. I think exercise is good for me. I do like to go for a walk. I do like to walk and clear my head, and just kind of, I do a lot of processing, mental processing along the way. So, that's something that I find is really good. Yeah, just clearing the head, and then I come back a little bit refreshed and feeling like, right, I'm ready to deal with it again. Yeah. And not so it's not a burden. It's not a burden, but but I'm ready. I'm prepared to get through the next stage, and I know what I need to do now to support.
Yeah, and I can see, what a lovely, caring, empathic person you are. And I guess for supporters watching, there will be part of them perhaps thinking, and what about you? And I think you kind of alluded to it a bit earlier, where walking is one way to clear your head, but it's that old saying, fill your own tank first,
Yeah.
then you can give to others. So what other ways do you find you can look after yourself so that you're in a good space for you, not just
Yeah.
um, for you?
Um,
Yeah.
I'm pretty busy with work and I really enjoy my job. I love my job and that's something that fulfills me. And I like to learn. So I do like a bit of research and things like that. So I do throw myself into that. So that furthers myself and it's something that I'm quite passionate about. And I guess I think just being a mum as well, and I know that can be stressful, but being a mum also brings a lot of joy to your life, and feeling full, and um, we can care for them. We can care for them and look after them, and at the end of the day, go, I actually did an okay job today. Affirmations are great, positive affirmations. I know when I was mentally unwell myself, I used to plaster affirmations on my mirror, and it was something a counsellor had told me to do and said, put 10 affirmations up on my mirror and read them every day. She said, you may not believe them or at first, but she said, say it enough and it will sink in. And, it was a really good thing. It was a really positive thing for me to just say them. And I was like, yep, okay, I've got this. There was a few things that I came up with myself which I felt good about myself. And I think having your own personal achievements as well. Yeah, especially during that time in my life. I liked running, and so just being able to run further was something I strive for. And so it's having something that's for you, even if it's reading a book. Take yourself away for an hour, read that chapter, read 5 chapters. Yeah, sometimes it's getting out of the house yourself. Take yourself out of the environment, buy yourself coffee in town. Yeah, get your nails done, get your eyebrows and eyelashes done. Possibly not for the men in the life, but maybe it's going up and meeting up a mate at the pub for a beer or something, or go watch the local rugby game. There's definitely ways you can take yourself out of the situation for a while just to bring yourself, recenter yourself.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying, because I think sometimes when we don't want to necessarily think of supporters as being in the caregiving role, but sometimes in the heat of things, or as you said earlier, in the build-up to a pretty traumatic court case, or if there's media around it, we do need caring for. And so
Yes.
I think it's really lovely what you're saying, because looking after yourself first means that you are then more likely to be able to not feel quite so depleted as a supporter. And I'm not saying that that's something supporters feel sometimes, often, or all the time. I'm just saying it can happen.
Yes.
I guess one of the things you've raised, and go you, without realizing it, is boundaries. Because again, when we look at impact on survivors in our lives, one of our hallmarks actually of child sexual abuse is boundaries. They were crossed and they were brutalized, frankly, at a young age. So for us to have any sense of, this is my body, my power, my autonomy, I can say what happened, that never happened. So if you fast track that, Penny, to adulthood, most survivors will struggle with boundaries.
Mm.
And
Yes.
can show itself, can't it, in saying yes when we mean no, or
Yes.
in over-giving, or in pushing ourselves too hard.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That was actually one of the things Todd and I spoke about early on in our relationship. He said that that he knew that he was he threw himself into his work, and he knew he needed a family life work balance. And that's something that that at times is difficult anyway. But it's something that we definitely make sure we try to get family time in, because he's a bit of a perfectionist, likes things done the right way. So yeah, trying to make sure that he gets a time out from work, yeah, is
yeah,
something that's,
it's so crucial because boundaries are huge.
yes,
Um, and it's not something we always recognize either.
no,
But you'll sense it because the survivor in your life will start to get a bit resentful about
yes.
people or situations, and then you'll realize, I haven't set a boundary around, actually, I don't want to sit down with them for dinner again. I don't want to keep working tomorrow, you know? So I think
Yeah,
those are really useful things to recognize, and thank you, because that's really useful for our survivors and supporters watching. We can be very challenging to be around because we are still struggling with the post-trauma of this. We are still navigating.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's just no judgment, and I think that's the key for someone supporting. You can feel frustrated, or you can feel um, a bit lost sometimes, but I think it's just talking, communicating how you're feeling, and let them know. I mean, I think it's important for both parties to hear how each other are feeling. Yeah, and hear it. Don't just, oh yeah, just really hear it.
Yeah, and I like that, and I like the fact that you were offered counselling, through not necessarily Todd's counsellor, but that avenue was open to you if you wish to explore it. So I like the fact that as a supporter, you were seen as, yep, you're entitled to that, and hey, take advantage of it if you would like to. I think that's really important. I guess the other thing with boundaries too, and I've spoken to another supporter recently who said she used to excuse her partner's behavior, bad behavior, because she thought, it's probably because of what he's been through. And when you think about that, that's a boundary issue, and she did her absolute best in very trying times. But is that something you can relate to?
Um, Bad behavior.
Not
um,
not deliberately bad, but
no,
bad
no.
behavior.
Um, I think his parenting style is very different from mine. I don't think that I know that, and he knows that. And I think his parenting style also comes from the way he was brought up, and obviously the way he was brought up was full of abuse. So that's something that we bang heads together about. But we talk it through, and we try to see each other's perspectives, and we do eventually come to an agreement. He thinks I'm too soft, and I think sometimes he's too hard. But it's finding something that we both can agree on. We'll
Yeah.
deal with it this way together. Yeah.
And I think again, it can be we can put out there or project onto others what we are feeling, and
Yes.
we can do that. So it's interesting because as as a survivor, Todd obviously had felt very isolated and alone. And then, of course, here's you all these years later, you can feel quite isolated and alone in this situation because you're carrying that load. And I'm not saying you saying it is too much or anything, but it's interesting, isn't it, how as survivors we can put how we feel onto other people, so that to the supporters in our lives who don't always realize, but they end up carrying what we are not able to.
Mm.
Is
Yeah,
that?
and look, I don't feel like that on a daily basis
No,
at all.
no.
It was mainly through that process of the court, and I think once that closed, and maybe a few months after, because like it was quite hard to take the sentence he was given. I think we really took a big step forward, and moved forward. That's not to say things haven't gone away for Todd. Like it's going to be with him for his life. But I think that was a huge part of his healing process. Yeah.
Yeah. And, when you say you took a big step forward, how did that show itself? What did you notice? What was the shift? How did you feel it?
He was lighter, I think. Not physically, but he was lighter, mentally lighter. He was not carrying such a heavy load. And I think I think that the flashbacks stopped. So he wasn't carrying so much stress, and he was just generally happier, and he felt, I think, a lot more centered as life. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's sort of,
we've lost it.
not that we like the word closure necessarily, but trying to think of another word that might fit better, but almost a sense of closure, like although the sentence wasn't, what Todd would have wished for, at least it was closed. At least it was over, that part of it.
Yes. The process had been dragged on for a lot longer than it should have. So it was just taken from 1 year to another year, and obviously COVID and things like that didn't help. But I think I don't think closure's the right word at all. It was just maybe peace of mind.
One of the steps had been achieved.
Yes, it was a goal he had set out, and it had been accomplished, whether the outcome was what he was wanting or not. It had been accomplished. It was finished, and he could now move forward. He could now move forward.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's quite a huge process, and I'm interested. You'd said a little earlier about, it will be with him his whole life, and I guess for supporters out there, knowing that it's not going to end when this person is 30 or 50 or 70. This will show itself in different forms throughout life.
And it's not necessarily, well, I guess from my experience, I would say from my experience, it's not a constant. It's not a constant, and it's no different than dealing with a toddler through their toddler years. I'm not. It's just something you deal with. you deal with at the time, and the toddlers have good days and they have bad days, and he's sitting here going, what are you saying? I'm not a toddler.
Come to
I'm
leave
not.
the room.
He is leaving the room. But it is, you have good days and you have bad days, and it's talking, and then just being patient, and then things are fine. We've been I'd say Todd's had a few really good years now.
Amazing.
Really, yeah.
And he may not even be aware, but the impact that he has on people, because of his story and his willingness to share and not hide behind name suppression, was the first step towards that. But the fact he's willing to help any other male survivors out there is amazing. And
Yes.
as I said earlier, Penny, he often offers you as well help the supporters out there. So, a wonderful man, and what happened to him should never have happened.
No.
And he's got a big heart and wants to help others through this.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
He's driven. He's driven. He really does. He would love to be able to. He'd really love to be able to support others and just make a difference in their lives.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Well, I know male survivors, Aotearoa, have branches all throughout New Zealand. He could possibly, train up and become a peer support worker or something, and actually actively help if he wanted to. And there was ever a minute in the day when he wasn't farming. But outside of New Zealand, we are a great farming community, and a lot of our industry and export is through this. So pretty long hours for some of our people here.
Yes.
Penny, is there any advice you would offer to other partners or spouses or other supporters watching this? Anything you think might help them when they're feeling a bit stuck or a little bit less or a little bit low? Anything you can?
Yeah. Find something for you. That would be my advice. Find something for you that's outside their home environment. It only has to be half an hour, where you can take yourself away and do something for you. Yeah, do something for you. If you're happy to go see a counsellor, then go see a counsellor. If you want to talk to a friend, I would just say be respectful of the story. Yeah, maybe talk to your partner if you want to talk to someone else about it, because they have to be comfortable with you sharing any information. Yeah, because it's not your story to tell.
No. It's a double whammy in a way, because it's not your story to tell, and yet as a supporter, I imagine it would feel quite weighty at times, and you wouldn't know how to respond. And sometimes when we don't know how to respond, we can respond in ways that aren't that helpful. So I suppose it's good to have someone experienced that might be able to offer some strategy or idea.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not opposed to seeing a counsellor if the need arises. I think they do have confidentiality, so you can disclose and it will not go further, which is a safe place for you to offload if you needed to. But if you can manage on your own, and don't ever try and manage if you're feeling so overwhelmed and you're not coping with that information. because mentally you can't help yourself or them. You've got to be good for you first to be good for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it. It's filling that tank up first. I'm also thinking too, Penny, is there anything you wish you had known? Because it sounds like you've got the book on it, really, on how to be a supporter of a survivor of child sexual abuse. Is there anything you wish you had known, not so much about Todd, but child sexual abuse trauma, that you would like to share with our audience?
Something I wish I'd known.
Yeah. That would have helped you support Todd.
I think everything I just learned along the way. I think, yeah, no, I don't. I'm not sure if there's anything specific. I know there was this, there's a bit of language and things around it that I had to Google because I was like, I don't even know what this means. Even the flashbacks, I had to do my research. I know Todd could explain it, but I'm one of those people that like to just dig a little bit further. Knowledge is power. So yeah, I did some research on flashbacks and the experiences and things like that. And I think by preparing myself, I felt more prepared. Yeah. Yeah, I just know that I think, yeah, just some of the research I'd done early on in my my 20s probably opened my eyes up actually to that, to child sexual abuse, and how many people it actually really truly affects. Like it's a lot more than people realize, and there's a lot of people out there that pretend it never happens, or it didn't happen, or it doesn't happen. And I think, I mean, we'd love to educate everybody, but it's just not. It really isn't. Some people refuse to believe, and it's really sad.
Yeah,
Really sad.
it's interesting what you say, because we know in New Zealand we lead the world. We 1 in 3 girls will be sexually abused by the time they're 16.
Yeah.
And up to 1 in 6 boys. But we know that it's potentially a lot more than that for our boys and teenage males.
Yeah.
And across the world, the stats really aren't that different, And the interesting thing is, as you said, there's so many people impacted, and yet there's huge silence. It's deafening, the silence around this.
Yeah.
But so I will never stop advocating for survivors and talking to supporters like you and fellow survivors.
Yeah. I think it just needs to happen.
Yep.
It needs to happen.
We
can't walk around with our eyes closed.
Penny, any last words from you before we head into closing out?
Just listen. That would be my only advice. My one thing, that if anyone took anything from this, is listen. You don't need to talk, just listen. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing having you with us.
No worries. It's been a privilege.
Please stay where you are, and I'll just say goodbye to our wonderful audience. So team, very grateful to Penny today, and there are many things she said, but 2 that stuck with me were that communicating your way through it is often the easiest and simplest way, and if you can do that, you're on the way to managing whatever arises. It doesn't mean it will always be easy, but I love that. Try not to stop communicating. The other thing she said was, leaving the environment or leaving the home sometimes, because you need to look after who you are so that you come back refreshed and then feeling more able to give, if that's required, to the survivor in your life. And finally, and she just said it, is, you're only required to listen. You're not actually required to fix it. And I get it that as a supporter, you want to fix it because you want to take the pain away. But unfortunately, it's not your journey, and you hitchhiked. You got picked up on the way. So look, we need to finish, but until we meet again, thank you to the amazing supporters out there. Without you, we would be less. And to the survivors, I'm always going to stand with you. I believe you, and I see you.